So the parasha begins, Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak ben Avram. Avram holedes Yitzchak. Vayehi Yitzchak ben Avram shana b'kachto as Rivka. And Yitzchak was 40 years old when he took Rivka for a wife. Vayeta Yitzchak Hashem Manoach Ishto ki akarahi. And Rivka was an akara, she was barren, she couldn't have children. So both Yitzchak and Rivka prayed to God that they should have kids. So the pasuk says, Vayaselo Hashem vata Rivka ishto. They listened to the prayer and Rivka conceived. And then it goes on, Vayitzrotzu habana mikirba, and etc. The story that the babies inside were fighting, because as Rashi quotes the Medrash that every time Rivka passed by a yeshiva Shem ve'ever, so Yaakov tried to get out. Every time they passed through a house of Avodah Zarah, of idol worship, Esav tried to get out, so it was causing her a lot of pain. Others say it, and in fact it's a famous Maisa, they say, because there's a famous tradition that every Jew is taught Kol HaTorah Kulo right before they're born. That a Malach teaches every Jew all the Torah. And then when he comes out, he hits a lip over here and they forget it. But the question is, so this is before they were born, they were conceived in the womb. So the question is, why would Yaakov try to run out and go to Yeshiva Shem ve'ever if you have a Malach teaching him Torah? What could be better? You have one-on-one with an angel teaching you Torah. Why is Yaakov trying to get out? You hear the question? If we have a tradition that they teach them Kol HaTorah Kulo, you taught the whole Torah in the womb, so why would Yaakov be trying to run out to Yeshiva Shem ve'ever if the Malach was teaching him Torah anyway? So the Velt says that with the chavrusa like Esav, you want out of there. That you might have the best share in the world, but one of the most important things is getting a good chavrusa. This is one of the proofs to it. So either way, if it's by Yitzrotzu habana mikirba, others say it was very pragmatic. I think it's the Baal HaTurim who says, you know why it was causing Rivka so much pain? Because Esau was very hairy and it was very uncomfortable. So Yaakov kept on pushing him away in the womb and they were always fighting inside. Whether it's a major theological issue or not, we'll leave it to the commentators. But to look at Rashi writes on the pasuk by Yasalo, and when they both Rivka and Yitzchak were praying that they should have a kid, she should become pregnant. So the pasuk says, and God listened to him, Yitzchak. It seems to be from the pasuk Yitzchak's prayer was answered, but not Rivka. So Rashi is bothered. Why did Yitzchak daven with more kavana than Rivka? Why was it Yitzchak and not Rivka? So Rashi tells us, She'ein domet tfilas tzaddik ben rasha with tfilas tzaddik ben tzaddik. You can't compare a prayer of a tzaddik ben tzaddik. Yitzchak's father was a tzaddik, Abraham. Rivka's father was not a tzaddik. Tfilas tzaddik ben rasha. Therefore, Lefichach lo v'lo la. So Rashi writes, that's why the tefillah of Yitzchak was accepted and not Rivka, because he was a tzaddik ben tzaddik. So there's an interesting discussion in the Gemara, in the Midrashim, who's on a higher level. Is it tzaddik on a higher level, or a Baal Tshuva, or someone who went off to derech, didn't know, Tinok Shadishba, whatever the case may be, someone who wasn't observant, they weren't religious, and they came back to the fold, they became now observant and religious. So who's on a higher level? The tzaddik, the one was brought up in what they call FFB, from birth, from a from home, or the Baal Tshuva, or the one who came from another home and now they became from, what's the higher level? So obviously there are different opinions in the Gemara, whether a tzaddik is better or a Baal Tshuva. Why do we have to take a position? Why can't we say they're equal? Why can't we say they're the same? Why does one have to be better? So they point out, based on a pasuk, Shalom Shalom or Rachel Akarov, that we learn out from Sukkim that they can't be the same, so we have to make a choice. So there's an interesting Rogatchover Gaon who wants to bring a proof from a Mishnah in Kedushin. The Mishnah says in Kedushin that if we're talking about marriage, and someone says, I'm marrying you on the condition that I'm a tzaddik. The person says, I'm marrying you on the condition that I'm a tzaddik, and it's clear from the person's actions, he's definitely not a tzaddik. So you would say it's a joke. Of course it's not a good kedushin. The Mishnah says, Hareza Safik Kedushin. In other words, you need a get. If you don't, you'll need a get to sever this marriage. It's a doubtful marriage and it's enough that you need a get. You need a divorce now. What do I need a divorce for? The condition was that he's a tzaddik, he's not. So the Mishnah says, the Gemara expands, Shamahira tshuva belibo. Perhaps the person did a hira tshuva, he had a mere thought of repenting and coming back to God and doing good deeds. He did a hira tshuva, and that's why maybe it is good. So what do we see from this Mishnah? Who's greater, a Baal Tshuva or a tzaddik?
Baal Tshuva.
How do we see that?
Because he didn't have the privileges in the first place.
So right, no, you're giving me, right, we'll get into that, but that's a proof from what we see from here is because the condition of the marriage was
that he
had to be a tzaddik. So, and what was he about tshuva? He did a hira tshuva. So if a tzaddik is higher than about tshuva, so there won't even be a suffix kedushin. It's definitely not a good marriage because he's not a tzaddik. And the fact the Mishnah says a hira tshuva makes you into a tzaddik, at least it makes it, you're minimally a tzaddik now, and we know you can't be the same. So therefore, the Rogatchover proves from this Mishnah seems to be a proof for the other school of thought that about tshuva is greater than a tzaddik. So the different strands, the Gemara in Yevamos, Gemara talks about who is greater. So in fact, there's a famous discussion. The Rambam writes in Shmona Prakim and other places, he talks about the philosophers, the Greek philosophers, Plato, Aristotle. He talks very highly of them in terms of pure intelligence. They're like the smartest people around. The only thing is they didn't have the Torah. They didn't have the Nevi'im, the prophets. But this on pure intelligence, no one could compete. No one was better. So he writes that the philosophers say, what's the highest level? The highest level is that someone should go ahead and work on themselves. We pointed out, the Rambam writes that the philosophers thought the highest level was someone who works on himself and doesn't even have a desire for sin. But the Rambam says that's wrong because our rabbis tell us, our prophets tell us otherwise. That they say the highest level is that you should want to, I should want to eat treif. That treif smells so good. I really want to have some pork chops at Tony Romo's or wherever. But what can I do? God says I have to eat kosher. I really want to be involved in arayos or other aveiros, other sins, but what can I do? God said not to. He says that's the highest level. It's not, but as I pointed out last week, as the Rambam points out himself, this is only true in the area of commandments ben adam l'makom, between man and God. But commandments between man and man, the Rambam says no, that you should work on. You shouldn't want, I really want to kill you, but the Torah says not to. And we don't want to steal from you, that's not good. A person should work on themselves, on the midos, that they don't feel that way. When it comes to commandments, ben adam lamakom, so then one should feel that way. So the Rambam says that. Comes along Rav Tzadok HaKohen. Rav Tzadok HaKohen points out, he wants to take the Rambam a step further. He says, not only is it true that you should have the desire and not sin, but you know it's even a higher level? Someone who actually is nichshol, someone who actually sins, and then they come back and the choser b'tshuva, that's even a higher level. That's the highest level. So according to the philosophers, you shouldn't even have the desire. The Rambam says, no, have the desire, just don't sin. But Rav Tzadok HaKohen says, no. He's not telling you to sin, but he's saying if one sins and one comes back, that's even on a higher level. Of course, we don't say just go ahead and sin because no one ever knows when they come back or not. You could sin and never come back, so no one's saying to do that. And fortunately or unfortunately, we all have enough sins under our belt already. We don't have to do new ones. So if we learn from our past mistakes and become better, that's even a higher level according to Rav Tzadok. In fact, he says, look at the difference between Yosef and Yehuda. Yosef, as we'll read a couple of weeks from now, he had the issue with the wife of Potiphar. She came down, she tempted him, but he ran away, he didn't succumb. And then we have later on as well the story with Yehuda and Tamar, where Tamar dressed up and Yehuda was nichshol, Yehuda had relations. So who's on a higher level, Yehuda or Yosef?
Yosef.
So Rav Tzadok HaKohen says Yehuda. Yosef only has 3 letters of the Shem Hashem, the Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yehuda has all 4, because Yehuda did tshuva. So Yehuda succumbed. If you do the sin and then you come back, you even can reach a higher level. Again, I'm not recommending anyone to go out and sin. But Rav Tzadok HaKohen is talking post facto. Once a person sins and comes back, that's even a higher level. So Yehuda was on a higher level than Yosef. And in fact, that's what they point out as well. In fact, we just had the story with Sodom and Amorah, that there's a famous ma'aser with Rav Moshe Feinstein. He lived in Europe before he came over to America. And he used to, on his way home every Friday night from shul, he stopped by, I guess, this elderly gentleman, I guess the Talmud Chacham, and he used to tell him over a word on the parsha. And this week, so he told Rav Moshe, you know what? I just don't get it. With all the explanations, how could it be that the daughters of Lot, what they did to their father, and yet they're going to be rewarded that the Mashiach is going to come from them. Ultimately, the Mashiach is going to come out. So Rav Moshe, he had his dinner, he went back and he started learning Chumash. He was really bothered by it also, tried to find a good answer. And Friday night, I guess after the chicken soup and the meat, he fell asleep and he had a dream. And these 2 women came to him in the dream. He believes they were Lot's daughters. Again, this isn't a Hasidic Shemaisa, talking about Rav Moshe. He doesn't go around telling stories. And these 2 women came down to him and said, you know what? We're Lot's daughters. I'll tell you what happened. That what happened after Sodom and Amorah were destroyed, people thought the whole world was destroyed. And therefore, when they came down pregnant, they were thinking, oh, immaculate conception. Oh, how did this person get pregnant? And that's why she says, Mayav. She publicized it. No, it was from my father. And Rav Moshe says, from that hergish of tshuva, from that feeling of tshuva, that's what the Mashiach is based on. The ability to come back after a terrible sin, what they did with the father, and then to come back and do tshuva. How embarrassing. It was very easy. They could have said, you know what, immaculate conception, something else. but they were modal emes and they admitted their sin, and from that feeling, from that hero tshuva, that the Mashiach comes. So, and in fact, that's why it says by Ma'aseh Bereshis, it uses the lashon v'nei tov ma'od. What was tov ma'od? It was very good. So Chazal tell us zu yetzer hara, the yetzer hara. What do you mean the yetzer hara is very good? That no, that you learn that if we learn from the yetzer hara all our sensitivities and everything, we can even become better. And that's why the point that you say al chay onecha ba'ones uvaratzon. You do al chay and the sin you did ba'ones. What do you mean ones uvaratzon? Ones uvaratzon is that you forget to set the alarm clock in the morning and you sleep to 10 o'clock. But since you wanted to sleep to 10, so therefore you're not really an ones as well, because so they point out that from the Yetzar itself, the Yetzahara, that a person as well grows by. That's why it says the great David HaMelech wanted to hide his sin. The Gemara in Moed Katan tells us that he was the first one to do tshuva. There are many people who did tshuva before him, but he was the first one after Ma'an Torah. After the Torah was given, he needed a real tshuva. And he wanted his sin to be covered up, and he said, no, I want everyone to see even David HaMelech could be nichshol in the sin of a married woman and nevertheless still become the great David HaMelech. He wanted to show that no matter how low one falls, they have the ability to come back. And in fact, there's a famous Meiser they say over from the Bnei Yissaschar, one of the Chasidish Sfarim, that someone asked them, we know there's halacha in kashrus of bittul b'shishim, that something gets nullified in 60. It depends what we're talking about, different measurements, but let's assume the standard case of kosher, so let's say a drop of milk falls into the soup. So a drop of milk falls into the soup, so what happens?
It depends how big the drop is, because if it's just a tiny drop.
Depends how big the drop is or how big the soup is. As long as the soup is 60 times the amount, so we assume it's called batul b'shishim. It's nullified in 60. It's good. It's 100% kosher. But I get questions all the time. People call up and say, this fell into the soup. So now they say, I say the soup is kosher. I said, we already spilled out the soup. We're not eating the soup. I want to know if the pot's treif or not. I tell you the soup is kosher. They say, would you eat it? Meaning, would I? I say, I certainly will eat it. In fact, that's what they point out. This is the question, can one be machmir? Can one say, I want to be strict. I know the halacha is nullified in 60, but I want to be strict.
But it's still kosher.
No, so some bring down, maybe you can. Others say no, it's apikarsis. You can't. The Chazal say it's kosher, and that's it. Comes along the Bnei Yissaschar and said, not only is it kosher, but this Shabbos is a united Shabbos. We should bring the soup to shul, and we should serve it to the whole community. This is the highest level of soup. It's Isser Nefach Leheter. It's prohibited food that turned to kosher food. That's the highest level. But Makam Bali Tshuva Omdim. That it was involved in sin and it came back, you can't do any better. In fact, that's the Gemara in Yuma. When the Gemara talks about an apparent contradiction of how great is Tshuva. On one place the Gemara says, Tshuva is so great, it could take your sins and level the playing field, make them into unintentional, basically make it even. And there's another quote that says, we can make your sins and turn them into mitzvahs, into merits. So which one is it? The Gemara says, lo kasha. It depends what your motivation is. If you're motivated, again, we'll take any motivation. As long as you do tshuva, we're happy. But on different levels. If your motivation was out of fear of punishment, so then we say you level the playing field. Is it on? But if we talk with the camera on.
Oh, yeah.
So if we're playing, if you did a tshuva out of fear, repenting out of fear, you level the playing field. But if you do tshuva from Ava, out of love, so then we say you even turn your averis into mitzvahs. And that's this concept here. You turn your averis into mitzvahs, even at the highest level, according to Rav Tzadok on. And someone who actually, because we know Ava is much greater than Yira, as the Ramban writes, that why do we say we have a principle? Ase docha lo sase. We have a principle that a positive commandment supersedes a negative commandment. Why is that so? That let's say I could wear tzitzis even if I have shatnez, because an ase represents love, and lo sase represents fear, because ase is action, lo sase is passive. So therefore an ase docha lo sase. And when a person does something out of love, it's a higher level than fear. So that's what we see according to the school of thought, that you do a tshuva me'ava, you even turn your averis into mitzvahs. That's the highest level. You share the soup with everybody. It's zu yetzer hara. The yetzer you could use for positive. And that's the story with Moshe and Lot's daughters. And that's the difference between Yosef and Yehuda. And that's David HaMelech. That b'makam bali tshuva omnin, that's what the Rogatchover says on that Mishnah, even a hero tshuva, we see makes you at least a tzaddik, and since you can't be the same, we see even a bali tshuva is higher. So this Rashi we read seems to go against that principle, because it says that he answered Yitzchak's prayer and not Rivka's because a tzaddik ben tzaddik. So either we could say this Rashi is working with the other school of thought, that maybe that a tzaddik is greater than a Baal Tshuva, or perhaps maybe tefillah is different. We're talking about davening here, so maybe when it comes to tefillah, there's a more objective standard. So it's true about tshuva might have went from 1 to 18, while the tzaddik could be on 25 to 26. So maybe in terms of how we look at things, in terms of growth, the Baal Tshuva went much more. But in terms of objectively, the tzaddik is still higher, and maybe that's when maybe when it comes to tefillah, it goes by where you're objectively holding. In fact, maybe that's the minhag. I know many people go to a tzaddik for bracha. I don't know many people going to Bali Tshuva for brachas. But the concept of going to a tzaddik for a bracha is that the point is that God doesn't want the tzaddik to suffer. So if you tell the tzaddik about what's happening and the tzaddik prays for you, it causes, if he's a real tzaddik, it causes him pain. So in order to avoid the pain of the tzaddik, so they go ahead and God answers the prayer. So it could be that by tefillah, maybe tefillah is different. Maybe, number one, maybe Rashi's working, that a tzaddik's on a higher level. And maybe even if you assume about tshuva's on a higher level, but maybe tefillah is different. And just to conclude, along these lines, there's a famous Mesha Chachma, as well as a Satmar Rebbe. We know the Gemara talks about, and Chazal tell us, the first time you do an Aveira, the first time you sin, you feel a little bad. The second time, it's Nasa Keheter. It's like you made a heter, it's like permissible. And the Bali Musa add, the third time it even becomes a mitzvah. The third time, when you steal the towel the first time, you feel a little bad. The second time, you already justified it. And the third time, the hotel's ripping me off. It's a mitzvah to steal. So we know that's what the Gemara tells us. So there's an interesting Meshach Chachma in terms of what do you mean Naseh Keheter? So is it this being descriptive? Is it saying it's okay? What does that mean? Once you sin, once you do the same sin a lot of times, it's Naseh Keheter. So that's a Machokas Meshach Chachma and the Nod of Yehuda on what's worse. Is this a worse type of sin or not? So the Meshach Chachma says no. He says it's almost like you're an onus. It's almost like it's out under duress. You did it so many times that you can't control yourself anymore. The Nod of Yehuda doesn't like it. He brings a raya. He says no, that's the worst sin you could do because then you don't feel any guilt over it. But that's a separate discussion. But working with the Meshach Chachma and the Satmar Rebbe, it's the same concept. That why b'makam bali tshuva omdim ein tarich, because when a person was involved in sin, it's almost like it's not sekahetu, you're an honest, it's almost out of your control. You're able to fight almost supernaturally to go against your teva and go ahead and stop doing that avera. So that's what Rashi says here, that ein dom et tfilat tzaddik ben rasha, but tfilat tzaddik ben tzaddik, and therefore Yitzchak was answered and not Rivka. So we'll continue next week. Any questions?
I was thinking, are we fair to the tzaddik to say that the Baal Teshuva is greater because a tzaddik may have come across great temptations, and you never know how much restraint he might have had to live. He might have had a tranquil life with not much temptation.
Excellent point. That's what Rabbi Salant and others talk about. That let's say for a tzaddik also, the difference between a rasha and a tzaddik is they both have temptations. The difference is Sheva Yipol Tzaddik V'kam, that a tzaddik, everyone falls 7 times, but the difference is he picks himself up. A rasha, once he falls, stays down and gives up. I can't do it anymore. But a tzaddik picks himself up. So that's why, in fact, when a person works on themselves, so therefore that's what he writes, you become on a higher level because those things that didn't tempt you, you worked on yourself, so you get rewarded for those things now, even though they don't tempt you because you worked on yourself. Right, so 100%, we don't believe in saints. In fact, that's what we're saying. The higher the level is that you have the desire still. But what could I do? Because God told me I can't eat this piece of meat. So you're right, 100%. Tzaddikim have the temptations as well. And that's that one school of thought that says tzaddik there is no answer who's higher. The different, and maybe applies for different scenarios as we'll see. But everyone's tempted, and therefore tzaddik, he's tempted in one way, and he withstands. But Baal Tshuva has different temptations. Once you've been involved in all those things, it's much harder, to come out of it. And then there's the immediate growth and then the continued growth. So, 2 schools of thought, and they're both right. It all depends. I think, and perhaps we could say, really, there's no contradiction. We all go through both stages. Like I heard from, Rav Alpert explained in the Haggadah, the 4 children, the Chacham, the Rasha, the Tam, and the Einu Yedei Elisho. The 4 different kids. So Rav Alpert explained, I saw others, that it's not really about 4 different kids, it's talking about 1 kid. But we all go through different stages in life. Sometimes, hopefully we focus on the wisdom. We have acts of rebellion, we have simple moments, we have moments we don't know what to say. So too perhaps here as well. Maybe there is no contradiction. It's talking about both of them. We all go through periods of these sonas of the Baal Tshuva, things that we've been nechshel in, things that we've stumbled in and we have to fight out of, and other things that we've been good at, we've been working on, and we work on ourselves that we even get tested on the next level. So that could be as well, that maybe there is no contradiction. Even within us, we all go through different stages of life, and therefore there's the Baal Tshuva in us, as well as the tzaddik in us. And we have to, and each come with different challenges, and we all have to we have to deal with the challenges of each.